Wow.
Nate Mitchell has an incredible career, one that I'm very excited for him to talk with you guys about because it's something different than we've gotten to see here at NPT before. Nate has worked as an actor, he has worked in the theater space, the live show space, he has worked in film and television, he has worked as a stunt performer and an actor, and the list goes on and on. He's got some incredible credits under his belt on shows like 911 and Station 19, on movies and things with directors that you guys are going to know or be familiar with. Incredible resume, and I'm very excited for him to tell us a little bit more about him.
I come from the Midwest, from Michigan, and I just went to a state school there, Western Michigan University. Wound up in a theater major. It just educated me on kind of what acting is, what's out there, what you can do, different types of acting methods, that kind of thing. And I've always been very physical, so I always gravitated towards the acting kind of work, exercises, methods that are more physically based. I really liked all the fighting, the action movies and stuff like that. And they had stage combat, right? And I like Shakespeare. They had the sword fighting. I always liked swords. So I did a lot of stage combat training. In my summers off, I would go to workshops and things like that during those first 4 years. And then I was a little nervous or scared to go in the real world. Didn't feel like I was ready to go yet and want a backup plan. They say, oh, you got to get a master's if you want to teach or something like that. And I wanted more training. So I was looking at in a broader experience. So I ended up going to England for a couple of years. And I trained there. I found an acting program that was very, very intensely physically based. So I did that for a couple of years. And then I came back, and Stacy, who you've met, right? She started working at a theater that was in Michigan called the Purple Rose Theater. So instead of us graduating and going to a big market, she was going to work that job. So I was like, all right, we'll stick around. We'll do that. And then they started to use me. They used her a lot more than they were using us all the time. So we ended up spending 4 years there in Michigan. They were making a lot of big films were being made there at the time. So what was great for us was we were working at this theater, and we were able to work on bigger projects. But one thing I noticed was there's a ceiling for Michigan talent. They're only going to let you do like one line here or this there, some small things. And everybody else, they're all shipping in from LA. So we're like, well, we want to be those. That seems like a better job. So
we gotta go so we can come back.
so we moved. Yeah, that's exactly it. We want to go to LA so that then we can come back and work these bigger jobs. So we moved out to Los Angeles. First couple years trying to find your bearings, learn, get relationships. Had an agent, was doing some acting, auditioning, and was super frustrated with the kind of the professional pipeline of what you need to do in town. I got super frustrated, and I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to find another way to be on set, to work on the things I want to work on, other than going to the auditions and finding parking and wasting my time on a thing that I wouldn't even cast myself in. Anyway, that barrier is also a mental barrier that I gave myself. So I chose to go another way, but it also stopped me from progressing in that area. Kind of a break for me was a day job that ended up turning into a big network and helped me learn and understand what stunts really was and working in stunts, which is different than I think a lot of people perceive what it is. It's a different job, and there's kind of a lot more to it than what you think from behind the scenes, where you see, oh, it's a stunt double, they do a cool thing. It's kind of half crew and half performer. But the kind of break that got me started in it was just working live shows at Universal Studios. I got cast in a show. We were opening like a Harry Potter land at the Universal Studios in Hollywood. And they needed a whole bunch of guys that could look high school, which I don't fit that bill anymore, but I just barely squeaked in. I was like the oldest guy in the group, but they needed 24 guys that could do some fight stuff and move around. And, I had the right height, and they needed all these guys, so that they hired a bunch of us, and they opened this show. And it was one of those things. I had already done a bunch of theater. I had done some movies, done some action sequences, and was teaching. And by this time, because of all that education and this, time in the theater and stuff, I was already, by the time I got hired for that, I think I was 34, right? And the other guys hiring, the youngest guy was like 18, had just turned 18. Most of the guys were like 21, 22. And like I said, I just barely squeaked in type wise. And when I looked at them, like, what are we doing? I don't, they hired me for something. They wouldn't tell me exactly what it is because all the IP is protected. It's not open yet. And then when I found out, like, the day before we start rehearsal and looked at rehearsal footage, and I looked at what the show was because they already had opened it in Florida. I get that initial kind of attitude of like, it's like, I don't know, you're like a serious actor, you did Shakespeare or something, and like, would you want to play Goofy at like Disneyland? You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. When I looked at, I'm like, and I've seen this so many times, just mental barriers that performers have. And what you have to understand is those it's important to kind of go to whatever you feel like you can do or you want to do at times, because it is the gateway to so many other things. So that show helped me with the company that I was hired through to do that role. And that got me a lot of other opportunities within that company. It created a network of me to learn who the other stunt people are and then where to train, and kind of get invited into those worlds. So in stunts, they have like, sometimes they have a term I've heard thrown around in LA, all expected abilities. And so when you think about fighting or a lot of things you see in the movies, that's one of 10 to 15 expected abilities that they want or need you to have.
What are some of the others that they would encounter?
Like rappelling, you should be able to rappel, like water safety and first aid, scuba diving certification, to be able to drive, stunt driving, as opposed to like, just like racetrack driving, like if you get on a track and rent a car or drift, but to do it for camera and to do the stunt work that we do, create a grid with cars and then have the heroes, car and the chase car go through the grid. Being able to ride a motorcycle, fire safety, and then fire burns, and having kind of the fire gear, high falls, being able to fall. High falls now are technically they're kind of low falls. Most of the time, 30 feet is kind of the distance that you really need to fall, because nowadays this industry standard, a lot of times they put people on a wire. So they'll put a decelerator on the stunt performer and they'll be able to erase the wire. So these record-breaking falls that are really amazing to see aren't necessary anymore, that were happening in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Wire work, that's another one. Just having what's called a jerk vest or harness. This is, again, for stunt performers, not something you guys will have to worry about as actors. Firearms, tactical movement with firearms, and then just blank firearms and how to manipulate, firearms and how that kind of stuff works. Swords and weapons work and that kind of stuff.
He says it all casually.
Trying to think.
All of these cool skills.
Yeah, they're really, I mean, that's the fun thing about the job. It's super interesting. It does take a while to get to the point of, getting all your expected abilities. But they're expected, and part of the reason is being a well-rounded stunt performer. So it's not that you can't do stunts without that. If you have a specialty and it's something they really need, then they're going to hire you. You're that person, whether you're a stunt person or barely a stunt person. Like there was a commercial for the Olympics maybe 3 or 4 months ago that they were doing a figure skating thing, and they wanted a shot of the figure skater through the ice, right? Looking up through the ice. Well, how do you do that? Right? You got to build a thing, right? So they just got a special effects, got a piece of plexiglass, thick piece of plexiglass. They put it on a platform like this, but higher, right? And then they were going to shoot through and they fake iced it where it looked like foggy ice around, and then had a hole in the middle. And then they need a figure skater to do a spin there, right? So they're not going to ask a figure skater to do that because they're high up on a platform. They're doing a spin. It's on plexiglass. You can't skate on plexiglass. You need to bite into the ice with the skate, right? So it's a super shady thing. So you're gonna have a stunt performer do it. Well, this is like I don't know, 110 pounds, 5'7" ice skater who's doing a particular spin that is Olympic level, right? So and like an Asian, performer. So that's the type they need. That's the skill they need, and they need a stunt performer to do that. They found somebody, coordinator had somebody, and they got them to come in. And that was kind of their niche in the stunt world. They did other figure skating. They got hired to double other people for figure skating things. The other end of the spectrum is somebody who's a career stunt person who grew up in stunts, because they're second generation, their parents are coordinators, that kind of thing. And they have all the expected abilities. And that's the person they're going to grab when they take this movie for like 4 months and they're going to shoot like a month in LA, but then they got to go to Bulgaria and do something, and they're only bringing like 6 Americans, right? They're having that's one of them, because that person will be able to fight the star in the fight scene in Atomic Blonde or whatever, where they filmed it, Czech Republic or wherever they were, right? They'll be able to do that fight, but then they'll also be able to rig the wire work for the stunt double to jump off the balcony afterwards. Then they'll be able to get in the car and do the drive scene, that you don't really see them, but you see the cars moving. They'll be able to do all the off-camera safety. They'll do the pre-production prep to ship all the stuff in the shipping containers, from wherever the warehouses or stuff in the US beforehand. And they'll understand the whole spectrum of the production line, and all the gear and stuff. So that person is super valuable. Instead of hiring 12 different people, you can just have one person, and you're shortening your line of communication of re-explaining it to a new person or whatever. They just go, and they're the Swiss Army knife of abilities. That is an all expected abilities, like a career kind of stunt person. Now I've progressed enough and had enough training in the stunt world that I can confidently now, I was not sure before, but call myself definitely like a stunt performer. Like, I've done plenty of stunts and can comfortably walk onto any set and go to work kind of anywhere in the world. And it'd be the same with acting if it was like on a stage. So that's kind of where my skill set lies, and kind of how my journey had gone. Through the live shows is what got me some training. And the big thing with that was I got some live show training and repetitions, tons of repetitions, because you run 5 to 6 shows a day. So you're going to get really good at whether it's rappelling or burns. When I was doing one of the roles I had, it was a full body, like a fire burn. So I would do that 5 times a day. And it's hard to get that experience in. Like, how many times can you fire safety or do a fire burn on a set? You might have a chance. Maybe they'll do 2 or 3 takes because they're going to pay through the nose to do those burns like in a movie. So it's like, yeah, we can light this full guy on fire. It'll cost like $6,000 a take. They're going to bump up the rate or whatever. And the live show is a cool thing. It's actually safer. They set up safer because of all the liability, and they're doing a thing that they're going to do again and again, year after year. So they have more support behind it, more rehearsal time. So it's a good environment to learn in, because it's gets sketchier when you're doing it in production, because you're always doing something that's never been done before. All the components are the same. C-stand's a C-stand, right? Light is a light, camera's a camera, but the way in which those are configured will always change, right? And are very fluid in the moment. So that's when stunts are kind of the shadiest, is when you're doing, and then especially like television, even more than film, is fast. Production is faster.
When you made the transition from those live shows to working on film and television, were there any real challenges that you encountered, or was there anything that felt different when we were talking about like some of the stunt skills that you had initially come in with versus what you had to do to adapt to being in front of the lens?
Yes, for sure. So this was a big thing, and this is where I got kind of the most help. Was this, and I've learned outside of that, working on other jobs now since then. But this was kind of a big wake up thing for me. Like I said, I had done a decent amount, a lot, I guess I would say, of fighting on stage. And I had put together some little projects myself, film fighting, and took a few courses in fighting for camera. And like I said, I did at least one action movie by then where I got to do a sequence on camera. So I thought I knew what was up, right? And then I get in the room, and we start putting together some sequences for like a Liam Neeson movie for the first time. And then they're plugging me in. At first, for free, you're doing small little things like, yeah, you're just going to get hit here, thrown on the ground. Cool. All right, Nate's cool. He's showing up all the time. He's being quiet. He's paying attention. He's throwing in ideas when it's helpful, not when it's not. So we'll keep having him around. We'll let him do a little bit more, right? And then when I started to get some of the bigger things where it's like what a supporting performer might do or something, just standing in their spot doing and this is early on in previs, the stunt team comes in, and typically there are no performers, and they're like making a song or a record or something. You're kind of on your own, you're recording yourself, that kind of thing, until you get it, and then you send it production, and then they give you notes, and you get it back, and you get it as close as you can before you bring in any kind of actors or anything. And even then you still develop and change it, right? All the way up to on the day of shooting, you change it. So I was in there in that pre-production spot. And that's when I really started to go, oh, wow, I thought I like knew a lot about this, and I don't know a lot about this. Pretty quickly, kind of figured out that it was just a different. It's a different kind of performing, right? Where your head needs to be at, what you need to do, and I guess specifically to stunt, like fighting as a stunt performer is a little bit different as well. But just camera awareness and what's going on with camera, how to perform it, how to move, what it picks up, what you kind of pay attention to was a lot different. And those pre-visits were great because in the beginning, Mark was using them before he even got into production, where it was like, hey, there's a free clinic. If you guys like want to learn how to do this or work on it, you can do it. Come in. And it wasn't on SAG contractor paid. It was for him to come in and then go overseas with another stunt team and already have something ready to go, or for him to put some ideas down to send to production to get feedback to make sure he was on the right track.
Very cool.
So it was like, so again, it's like, well, I'm already like, I've done all this combat stuff and I was in this action film and I've choreographed, professionally for, theaters and stuff. And I've taught and, I worked at these live shows and like, why am I working for free and giving them these ideas? And if you come in with that attitude, right, then you're not going to have access to that world.
Right.
Like, for example, the ice skating thing that I just told you about. I remember that one. That was a call in the morning. It was like 8 a.m. It's like, hey, I'm on another job. This is a stunt rigger who owns a rigging company that does all the flying stuff. He goes, hey, I'm on another job. This guy, another stunt coordinator, is working a commercial for me. He's tagging in for me, well-known stunt coordinator. I can't be there. Can you deliver some pads to him? It's just him on the job because it's an easy little thing. Just throw some pads and, come by this airport hangar, pick up these stunt pads, bring them to him. I'll pay you like $70. I was like, okay, I'm not doing anything today. I drop my daughter off at school. I'll go do that. So I show up. It's just him. He said this is one of the bigger stunt coordinators in the industry. And he's a bit older, right? So he's just supposed to be manager. Stunt coordinator, he's not supposed to do anything, right? He's on his own, right? We get there. The gig is a lot more than we thought than it was described to him and what it should be. And I got to unload these pads, and then he's supposed to drag them around and all that stuff. He's like, well, what are you doing today? Just I don't have too much. He's like, you want to hang out for a minute? I think they're gonna shoot in like an hour. You want to like just help me drag pads or whatever? I'll give you like $100. It's like, sure. I don't have anything going on this morning. I'll hang out. It ends up being the whole day, a much bigger deal because the performer was an athlete who was like paraplegic. They do multiple sports in the Special Olympics, and but this one was skiing, where they like speed ski down a hill or whatever. First, they wanted him on the ground. They were doing fake snow. It was like 90 degrees out, and they were doing like in Griffith Park, right?
Always.
And they were doing fake snow, right? And they wanted him to slide, and then we got to like stop him, and then they want to put him on this platform and have them go down this platform. And basically, I think they pulled them or pushed them. No, they had the ski thing, the self-motivate, but then be stopped. It was a much bigger thing. So we had to borrow like PAs for safety, do that, do all the pad. And anyway, long story short, I was there like 8-9 hours, and he was like, thank you so much, the coordinator. And I'll make sure to get you on the thing. And a morning call to drop off some pads for $70 turned into a day there, which was like a day rate for stunts. It's a little more than performers. I think it's 9 something for like a performer if you're just a daily performer on a job, and it was like 11 something I think stunt performers get. So we went from 70 to $1,100, and then he goes, hey, they're gonna do the ice skating thing I told you about. Like 2 weeks later, are you available? Yeah, sure, I'll come to that. So that turned into 2 days on a commercial, and then he knew another coordinator, and I had spent the day with him just hanging out, talking, doing whatever, helping him out, being solid, right? And that was a coordinator who's doing the show The Pit. And so on my way home from that first day, I got a call. Hey, I was just talking to Doug, and are you available? Would you want to work on The Pit next week? Sure. But that was in the morning. This is the exciting thing about the business, but also the thing where people get anxiety because they have no idea what's coming next week or if anything is coming next week. So they kind of freak out about it. But it was like, well, when I woke up this morning, I didn't know I'd be doing this. And then by the end of the day, I had those 2 days, and then I was going to work on the show. And then it's the ups and downs people can't handle too. So here's what happened. Uh, I send them the selfie. I send them my size for the pit or sizes for the pit. We're good to go. And then they wrote that scene out. Right. So I wasn't on it. So I was like, whoa, I just made like $3,000 today. It was randomly. And I was like, and I'm going to work on this cool show. And I was out. Right. So I was like, oh, that stinks. But I still got 2 days. So it's cool. But then it was like, oh man, I promised this person this job. I couldn't give them the job because they wrote it out. So 6 months later, ring, ring, ring. Hey, there's another opportunity on the pit that you would be good for that I could slot you in. Are you available to stay? Yes. So, but if you go, oh, and it was me, and you hit your head against the wall and you feel sorry for yourself or whatever, it's just gigs come when they come. It's your gig. It's not your gig. It happens. And you just have to ride that.
We've talked about jobs that we've done and the jobs that you don't hear about and the ones that don't make it on the resume, and how sometimes those are cool ones as well. They're cool to us, even when they don't seem flashy and cool to other people, but you're like, that was maybe my favorite thing to work on. Do you have an example
just a
of one?
non-union thing or a friend
That's
thing,
what I'm saying.
or that kind of thing, or even if it's a crappy project or it doesn't go, they don't, you make it and it never comes out or it's never released or anything like that. Some of the funnest ones, I'll show you one that actually turned into something that was so fun. I think it's called The Greatest One Shot Ever. Right. And it was just friends and stunt people that were getting together and interested in making this thing. And I've got a really good friend in the stunt industry. And another really good friend of his was working for a company, like a YouTube company called Rocket Jump. He was working for this company, his friend, and we put together this sequence. And then he's like, and his friends had helped shoot it. He's not a stunt guy, but like a director. And so he did the shooting and the editing of it, and then just took it into work to Rocket Jump. And then they're like, yeah, we'll pay for this. We'll pick it up. And then they sold it as like promo material for, there's a movie called, it's like a Mark Wahlberg movie called Mile 21, I think.
Okay.
So then they incorporated like the release of Mile 21, like the premiere, into like a Rocket Jump video and tagged, and then it became like this little action sequence we put together. But it was just a fun, like 4-day sequence of just like, it was just laughs the whole time. There was no production pressure. And it was a room of people, probably the size of probably 15 or 20 of us, just putting our heads together, putting sequences and just having a blast. And we didn't even have a gig or a job to sell it to.
Right.
We were just doing it to do it. And
we love it.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And it was just so fun. If you do this, just to be on the big thing, some people do, and they're just and they just want to be on a big show or a big movie. And then other folks, they do it because they like doing it, and you're just going to make it because you're going to make it, or you're going to act in a scene, here or at the local thing regardless, and you'll do your self submits and things. I find that the folks that do it just because they like doing it, and it doesn't really matter whether it's free or paid or big or small or this or that, tend to get more opportunities. And I think it just has to do with networking. They meet more people. They're working on it more.
So generally better to be around.
Yeah, generally, yeah.
Because their quality of life is better. I mean, they're genuinely enjoying what they're doing. And I think that is so what it's about versus us like always trying to chase the thing. You get lost in that chase. And you're just not as easy to be around from a working perspective.
Right. If you go out there, if you work, or as you guys are training and starting to submit yourself and stuff, the fun thing about this career, for some people, this career isn't for them because it's too scary of not knowing. But that is the fun about it, is you have no idea what you're going to do. Like, you're inspired, you're coming to this, you signed up, you're putting your time in on a weekend, you're training, you're doing everything you're supposed to do because you saw something that inspired you to do this kind of work, or a show or movies or a play or whatever. And you're like, I want to do that. Well, you're not going to do that because you're going to do something else. You don't know what it is. So it's going to be super cool. And the people that are doing the thing that you're inspired by, they didn't start out going, I want to do that. Right? They just ended up there because of the way, and it's just how it works. It's kind of I don't know. It's super exciting and fun in that way. It's kind of this new thing, a term. I mean, relatively new. I don't know how new it is, but that I've heard kind of thrown around. That's like an action actor. A good example of that would be like from that John Wick franchise, like the Keanu Reeves role. And I would also say the extreme example of that would be Keanu Reeves. Extreme in terms of the intensity of what he's doing and what he's training, um, and then it kind of peters down from there because he's just doing super intense stuff. But when they make the film and they do it, he still has a stunt performer, right? That's doubling him, or maybe even multiple for certain shots. For example, he's going to do a bunch of fights and flips and get sore and get bruised and get beat up and sometimes even tear things or get hurt. I know Henry Cavill on Highlander, they had to shut down production because during training he hurt himself. Um, which again shuts down production, right? It's another reason. It's like, I want to do stunts. I want to do my own stunts. And it's like, well, there's millions of dollars on the line that now you're costing. This money is real too. Like when you read about it, you're like, this money comes from somewhere. And then when you don't have it, you don't have it. And then they can't make the movie,
Yeah.
and then you don't get to be the actor in the premiere or whatever, right? You see, he's the kind of the extreme example. But still, when the car comes in and like hits him after he like beats some guys up and runs out of the thing, that's another guy. If you want to do something like a Keanu Reeves movie, it's very rare for an actor who doesn't come from that world, like already a world-class martial artist or have that skill set from, 20 years of experience to develop into that role. Doesn't mean you can't, like Charlize Theron and Halle Berry and stuff, but they learn real quick, like how rough it is. And they're like, after that, they're like, I kind of think I still want to do this a little bit, but maybe like I'll do a feature that has like some dialogue in it more for the next one, and then get back to doing some of that or whatever. And she's done some other stuff too. I think she really likes that aspect of it.
Right.
So if I tell you, you don't really want to be a stunt performer and then you go out and you still want to pursue it, then you probably do want to be a stunt performer. But stunt performers in general, they're not action actors, so they're doing other stuff too. They're your longer hours, you're more uncomfortable with extreme conditions that you're in uncomfortable positions for longer periods of time that most people won't tolerate. So you could be like just stunts, straight stunts, which kind of generally you're doing stuff, right? Utility stunts is basically stuff that is like off camera. Basically, you're on the crew, right? In the stunt department. So you might be flying in pads. You might be rigging the lines up to like a crane to fly somebody, right? So you're working with the crew ahead of time. You're coming in during a rehearsal day and you're setting up like a winch and screwing it to the ground, and then going up in the perms and attaching like shivs or pulleys, basically, to run and then line that up. And then you might be testing it out, making sure it's going to work. That's like a utility stunt job.
Okay.
There are other utility stunt jobs like we want two performers to run off this little, we're going to use the actors. So it's only going to be like a 10-foot little cliff to jump into the water, right? At like Disney Ranch, right? But we haven't used that area of the Disney Ranch pond in a while. So we need a utility stunt person who's a diver to go in and make sure there aren't any logs or anything. The water's totally clear the day before, right? So we need a diver. That's a utility stunt job. It's not even when they're shooting, right? And then when they're shooting, they'll have water safety there or something else for them as well. Things like that. It'd be stuff like that would be a utility stunt job. Safety and any kind of pads that you're doing, like the big pads or mats that actors have to fall or roll on, or stunt performers and stuff. Setting those up, getting those to the location, moving those around. That's a utility stunt job. And the other thing is like negotiating fear. So a lot of times we have to deal with is mitigating people's discomfort and fear. And it's first you got to be able to mitigate and regulate your own. As a stunt performer, and then you can work with the rest of production and start working with the actors. And there are certain fears that over the course of exposure and training, you can eliminate. And there are other fears, if you're a sane person, you can't, right? Because that's what keeps you like sane. It keeps you alive, right? It's a natural instinct. And those, there are techniques or things that you can work on for yourself to negotiate with those. Like, for example, height. Right? Some people, even stunt performers that I know, are like, yeah, I do this, I do that, but I'm not going up.
Yeah, I've got a massive fear of heights. I
Yeah,
hate
so
building
that's the
heights.
issue, right? So, one of the things you learn, with heights is to focus on your work, like what's in front of you. So it doesn't you're not taking the time to go, "Where am I? Where" it's like, "Or that's I got that much farther to go. Ah, it's still higher than I thought it would be." It's, "What is right here?" Like, what are you doing? Which is cool. You can relate it to acting is like, what is my action? What am I focused
Mm.
on right now? Not what could happen or this or that kind of thing. So that can help you kind of get used to it. And then you just get comfortable over time. Repetition helps with fear. Like if you have the opportunity to rep something out or something similar to what you're going to be doing, that can help. And then one of the big things is breath, like breath work. Understanding how to use breath can be helpful and useful. The biggest thing is when you are doing anything that is of high anxiety or stress, and especially even when you start like social interaction, right?
Mhm.
That is going to create different fear, right? Aspects. And then once you get social interaction where you're supposed to be the center of attention, like you guys are all looking at me right now, uh, that's going to create a certain level of anxiety or fear, right?
He's like,
Um,
"This way worse than heights."
yeah, way worse.
Way
Yeah,
worse than
yeah,
fire.
yeah. And then if you put a camera around and there's money on the line, and then people are you whatever, and you're trying to do a good job or whatever, you're gonna have different tensions and stuff that build up
Mm.
as opposed to doing your self tape that you're comfortable with because you've done it 100 times in your room, right? And then you kind of have that down. The first few times you're a little more self conscious and fearful, and over time. But then when you go into that set environment, it's totally different thing. Then you're gonna have different mental fears and tensions that bring in. So, yeah, different breath work and things are super useful for that. You get that note of tension, right? You need to relax. It's like, well, they tell you that, and you're just eventually you just get frustrated. And I roll. It's like, well, how? You tell me how to relax. You got to figure that out. Not just like like it's basically just somebody going, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it. Okay. Oh,
You're
thanks.
like, "Great, well, what's the right way?"
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But like, tension isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like, it can be useful, but what needs to be relaxed and what needs to be tense and when, right? And those things are malleable; they change, right? Or organic. So it should be there at times. You need certain tension, and through action and understanding action, which you guys are going to work on this weekend, helps you understand that too. Um, a fight can be safe and have beautiful movement and timing, but look too loosey goosey, especially for camera. It won't look like a hard hit, right? So you need a certain tension to create that hard hit. But when you put that in there, how much do you need where it destroys your movement, where it just looks crappy? So you need a balance between tension and relaxation.